Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Steve, and today we will be going over the Neca's Pacific Rim Series 3 Kaiju Knifehead. This is the kaiju that we've seen off the Alaskan coast. And I gotta say, I'm really excited that they decided to re-release this figure in a more upscaled version. So we have something that a lot more accurately represents it from the film. Because, granted, don't get me wrong, I really liked the first series Knifehead. It's just, for the scaling purposes, it just didn't really work for me. And I'm really glad that they decided to go back to the drawing board and give us a bigger version of it. And they also gave us a nice battle damage look. Instead of just going, hey, here's a bigger figure, you guys enjoy it, it gave us a little bit more for our money, which I really do appreciate that idea. Also, this is probably my favorite kaiju from the entire film. It's definitely the most Godzilla-esque for me, especially for the scene when he's rising up out of the water and everybody on the boat's just like, I'm a damn you! And then Gypsy Danger rises up out of the water and he's just, and then he has to defend the boat from Knifehead while trying to keep him back at bay. And it's just probably my favorite fight scene from the movie, but enough about that. For the packaging, again, we get the same thing we get with all the other Series 3 figures, with the Pacific Rim logo at the top. We get a nice concept image of Knifehead on the bottom right corner with his name, copyright stuff on the bottom. Another thing, point out battle damage, because we only get one other sticker from these so far, and that's from the Gypsy Danger that we got in Series 2. On the back of the packaging, we get a nice image of the figure with all the blood. His category is number 3, which is correct. And then we get a nice image of just his face right there. So, I'm really excited about opening this guy up. Let's get him up out of his plastic prison. So I just want to point out that I am really happy that Neca decided to come along and give us a more upscaled version of this figure. Like, for comparison, this was the Knifehead that we originally got. Mr. Tip-Over Knifehead. Which, I didn't hate this figure when he initially came out. Like, I had a few little problems with some of the coloring, and was overall what pretty much hurt this guy most was just his size. Which, when you compare it to a lot of Jaegers, like, he looked good on the shelf by himself, but you couldn't do any scenes with him with Gypsy Danger or just have him near any of the Jaegers in general, just because he just seemed really inferior compared to those figures. And I'm really glad that Neca decided to bring us this bigger version, just so that we have something to actually proudly display with all our others. And also, they went with the gave us a battle damage look with them too, just to help us make this guy not obsolete. Which, we still have a reason to own you, buddy. So for starters, with the detailing on this guy, he has a really nice molded sculpt for his head. Like, I just overall love the look of the facial features on this guy, where he has a nice blue on the portholes up here and the launch shaft coming up here, which, giggity, right? And then, I also really like that they went with, one of my complaints with the Trespasser is his blade on his head was really smooth looking and really has a nice sharp look to it. Well, this has more like the chisel look to it, and I love this, and it just really helps to look like what it did in the film. And there's gnarly teeth here, which I really like that they actually, I'm smacking the camera, that they went back through and redid all this portion of the face, where they have like the nice battle damage look here, and then as you go look inside, he has that second row of teeth here, so he has a nice shark look to it, and it's just really nasty looking. And one thing I want to point out is on the original Knifehead, for his mouth, they went with the, if I can get my camera to focus, with the red texture on the inside of it, which whenever you see the monster in the movie, he's just like, there's just blue stuff flying around everywhere, and this just doesn't really accurately represent that. While with this Knifehead, he just has all that blue going on in there, and then he has a little bit more of a subtle tone, which I do appreciate a lot. Now, granted, it doesn't really help with closes his jaw all the way, but it works for me. It's a really nice look for him. While with this Knifehead, he just looks like probably my first attempt at ever trying to make out with a girl, just all like, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't understand. And for the rest of the figure, we get a lot of the nice shiny of the blood, battle damage blood on him, which is just, I just love how much extensive they made it look and how they got it on this side of the body, which is a lot of where you saw the battle damage from the film, which is just really nice attention to detail on this guy. And the same thing I pointed out when we were doing the Trespasser video with the giant neck straps that he has. And then for his backpack, they got a really nice shine to the back of it while keeping a nice rough texture detailed with the black tusk or claws or whatever you want to call these things. Which, bring it again for the little Knifehead back in. When they did him, he has a lot. It's just pretty much all shine here. It just looks a little bit. I guess the best word for me to use here is the textures is unresolved, like just not defined here. And then they went with the white tusk, which overall this works a lot better for me, just because like when you see him coming up in the film where he's just underwater and he's just all like, like this just really works for me with that whole scene there, which is just sweet. And I really love all the yellow travel paints that's coming along on this guy. Like it's just a really awesome look from the film that they went with this guy. And it's also cool that with the battle damage here, it's chopping up where the travel lines go through. It just covers those up really nicely, and I just think this is phenomenal. And a lot of this is pretty much what we got with the rest of the scene with Trespasser, with the skeletal look on his arms, and the nice black claws here, which are still sharp as ever. Don't let your kids play with this. They might get a little bit injured. And then he's got the crocodile plating on his legs, and his nice little feet, and the bendiness of his tail with the nice little point at the end. So for his articulation, he's got a little bit of a head swivel. Can't really go all the way around like Trespasser, but it just moves a little bit. And he's got his mouth opens up and down, which I want to point out on mine, it's really loose. Like you see, he just kind of jiggles him down. But if you just want it to stay in place, like it stays in place pretty well when you're not messing around with the figure. So you don't really have to worry about that. And for his arms, it's mostly the same as how we have with Trespasser, where it can move up and down. It has a nice range of motion all the way around. And one thing I want to point out is his arms aren't really as constrained as Trespasser's, like you saw in my previous video where his arms are sticking out and he's like, give me your hugs, I need cuddles. This one moves in a little bit more, which is nice. It's not as good as I would like, but because mainly I want to get him like where he's clutching Gypsy Danger and trying to stab him with his face. But it works a little bit better for me. And then for his arms, they got a little bit of a pivot here, but it's just constrained by the plastic here, so you can't get too much range of motion. But it still rotates around all the way. And then for his hands, they got a little bit of a bend to it, and they also rotate. And then for his little alien arms, which actually on this one it's a little bit better to see, where this actually has a pretty crazy range of motion, which with the original one, which I could bring them in, these didn't move at all. So it's a really nice upgrade from what we got previously. And then his hands rotate around. And then for his legs, they just got a little bit of range of motion, going sideways anyways. And then forward and back, they pretty much can go all the way around, which is crazy. And his knees bend in and out. And a little bit, and they got all the rotation there too. And his feet got a really nice pivot to them, which one thing I failed to point out Trespasser is it's a really strong pivot here. So you get a lot of really good positions with them. Sometimes you got to work with them just to get him to stand up with his arms straight out, but they hold the pose very well. And then also for his tail, he just has the same kind of rubber tail with the wire going through, which I just want to iterate. I would try not to mess around with this a whole lot, just because with experience with other toys kind of like this with the rubber, the wires will eventually sometimes pop through with these, so just a heads up. But it's really nice that they went with that anyways, because then you get a nice little, if you want to have like the tail coming around for posing with them, like you get a lot of mobility with that. And then just one other thing, yeah, so there's a nice rotation at his waist with the, doesn't really crunch very well. It's got a little bit of a bend to it, but it gives you a nice rotation on it. Doesn't go all the way around, but it really works for me. And here's Trespasser compared next to the battle damage Gypsy Danger, which I am so in love with this look. Like, I just think this is a very nice way of displaying these guys on the shelf. And here he is compared next to the Kaiju Leatherback and another Jaeger from the previous line of Eureka Striker. And here's Knifehead compared next to another NECA figure with the Dead Space 2 Isaac Clarke. So with this guy, I really don't have any major complaints about this guy. Like, other than his little bit of mobility that he has with his arms, which it isn't, like, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just I wish his arms could constrain it a little more. But other than that, like, they move around pretty freely, and then if they could maybe would have fixed this part a little bit better. But it's nothing major. Like, it doesn't hinder me from wanting this figure, and I would still highly recommend picking this up. Like, if you are a big fan of kaijus, like Godzilla or Pacific Rim in general, like, this is the figure you need. Like, even if you bought the previous Knifehead, if you got this one, this guy is just completely obsolete now. When we have this guy like this, you could just get out of here. So I'm really happy that Neca decided to go back and give us a real version of this figure. And this is definitely the definitive, the must-have version of this figure in your collection. Now, later on in the next coming months, they're going to be releasing a version of Knifehead to go with the 18-inch version, Gypsy Danger, which I'm very excited about, and I already have on pre-order for you guys. So when I get it in, you guys will be the first ones to see it, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to have light-up effect features. I'm just hoping that figure is if it's as any good as this figure, they could just take my money now. I'm just so happy about this. So if you guys are interested in getting this figure, I know Amazon still has this guy. You can pick him up at a really good price. And Big Bad also has this guy in stock, which for Big Bad Toy Store, this is where I got my figures from. And I just love their entire process. Like, I've never gotten a bad order from those guys. So I would recommend ordering from those guys if you can. But what do you guys think of this figure? Are you guys going to be picking this figure up, or do you guys already have this collection, or do you think this thing's just rubbish and you just want to let me know? Like, I would really appreciate you guys giving me the specs, some input. It would be great. But thank you guys for watching, and if you like this and want to see more of this, please give it a like and a subscribe. Thank you guys for watching.